So I'll come to you, Mr. Vasanth Kumar. Considering that e-commerce, and particularly I think your sector has seen the maximum grill of it, and I mean it in a good way, it's made customer buy your product who would otherwise not have been able to reach to you. So how do you kind of make it see as an advantage in your franchise system? I'm sure this Omni-Channel is your strategy in the coming times. So how are you going to pass it on to the franchisee?
In fact, it's a very good opportunity. With the e-commerce common now, we see that we are rolling out our omni-channel strategy next year. We are already partnering with the marketplace like Flipkart, but we are launching our own channel as well, and eventually we'll get into omni-channel. The advantage is that we will be able to connect every franchisee to the whole network of our products. So very soon you'll have opportunity of selling all the price points of what we have in any corner of India through a franchise outlet. So it's actually an enabler to our business.
So the fulfillment will happen through the franchise.
We are looking at fulfillment, click and collect, returns. So overall, we will bring the franchisee in the same ecosystem. Right. Apparel is very much, even today, touch and feel. While a lot of noise has happened on the e-commerce sale the past 6 months, barely 6% of sales has happened in apparel category. Bulk of it is electronics. Apparel still is very much a touch and feel. Next year, we are seeing all the other brick and mortar players launching their own omni-channel and their own sites. So you'll see a lot of action happening from the existing brick and mortar players. We are also launching our own omni-channel. The difference is we will be able to get franchisees into this by enabling them in terms of fulfillment and also participation in revenue generation.
Sure. So you'll actually be kind of signing franchise agreements with saying that, omni-channel and
also they'll be also participating in the omni-channel of physically whatever being transacted in that point where they own, there'll be the commensurate revenue share. That's what we will do.
Sure. I'll come to you, Mr. Manchanda. Technology, virtually nobody goes now to collect, even at the patient service center to collect reports. Everything is downloaded through technology. So have your franchisees actually ever come back to you and complain that the customer doesn't walk in? So does that kind of, if you have a kind of an engagement with the center which is ongoing, going to give a test, and they also come home mostly. So do you feel that technology has aided your business or kind of worked against it? And how have you managed this change with the franchisee?
No, I think it's a huge area for us. Going forward, I see that a lot of investment will happen in this space. I think one change that's happening in our sector is that business or relationship with the customer is moving from transaction to engagement model. That 30% of diseases are nowadays lifestyle diseases. And a lot of our customers actually come virtually every month. So the frequency of testing is going up. So it's no more a transaction that you get one test done, but nowadays every month there is a testing needs. And customers are looking for collation of reports where they can compare the previous visit results. So it's actually moving from transaction to engagement model. E-commerce is really helping us on that. The second area which you mentioned, that home collection and downloading a report online, that actually has been happening for a long period of time, but the entire business concept is moving to anytime, anywhere. Nowadays, nobody visits to a lab or a collection center. They want the phlebotomist, the guy who comes to draw blood sample, to either office or at home. Nowadays, people actually book tests for their parents or folks sitting somewhere else in other cities. So the e-commerce and technology is going to play a huge role in our business.
It's more important to accept it.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Sina, I'll come to you, Sunchitra. So how has technology kind of changed business at PepsiCo?
It's a very broad question. Yes, we could be here for one whole day talking about technology and Pepsi. But definitely, technology is an enabler. I don't think there's any debate about that. And with our own business partners, it's about helping them also leverage the technology so that our systems speak together. And that, I think, is the biggest challenge that we have. How do all our franchisees and PepsiCo globally have the same systems that can speak to each other and therefore have a joint business plan, which can then enable us both to move forward in the same way? So rather than having two separate systems, having a harmonized system is the key challenge for us.
In lieu of the same, I'd also like to ask you, how do you kind of, so maybe you can tell us in general and also in purview of the organization, how do you enable your existing franchisee to do more with you? So what sort of systems do you put in place? What sort of policy do you put in place? And more importantly, what sort of relationship do you enjoy with a franchisee which is existing that you enable him to do more with you? You know, so let's say, as I was telling him about a single unit becoming a multi-unit, but I mean, in your case, of course, probably having more bottling plants or having a situation where, you know, he has bigger engagement with you.
That's right. So one is an organic growth model where you have the same person doing more in a larger geography. And the other is the inorganic model where you have more products through the same franchisee. So for example, if you want to, this is new in our own terrain, but let's say from the beverage business, we want to go into the foods business. So that's a huge opportunity, completely opens up the space for us. And it's completely inorganic. Or if we have one kind of beverage products, can we go with him for another whole portfolio of products? So we have a large number of products. So how do we build it inorganically is more the key question versus just organically.
Okay. So now I'll come to the most tricky part of the discussion, which is conflict management. You know, you can't really get out of them. They would, but in your case, Mr. Manchanda, hats off. You know, not a single outlet closed is a big achievement in a franchise system, which is all unit-based franchising. So, you know, so how do you kind of best find ways? I mean, and I think this is something that would be of great interest to the whole audience. Have you put some sort of systems in place? Because, you know, not every time. So, you know, sir, you've been with the Carlson hotels right from the very beginning when they entered India. But today, probably, you're not talking to all the individual franchisees yourselves on a one-to-one level. You have teams and you have professionals who are doing it for you within the Carlson group. So how do you kind of make sure that if a conflict is coming up, you kind of put it down there and then, or at least find a good way to resolve a conflict? And which works in favor, it's a win-win for both of you.
I wish we could have answers for all of these, but I think what we have followed and which has worked for us is we have done a collaborative task force, what we call, in which we have nominated owners, you know, fortunately or unfortunately in India, you know, sometimes one hotel is owned by 3 people. So if I have 114 hotels, I have 300 owners. So we can't have 300, we can't be talking to 300 at the same time. But we have a nominated body which actually meets very often. And whatever issues are there, and mostly issues revolve around marketing, advertising, as in any retail or any consumer item, you know, would be. So those are there. And this also helps to listen to them. I think for keeping good relationships, one of the key things is we all have to learn to be good listeners. If we listen to what the problem is, we solve. We do have a well-knit system wherein our regional people who handle north, south, east, west, they go and meet them once in a quarter.
Right.
And then whatever, there are some logical issues, there are some which unfortunately we can't fulfill. We have to deal with it. But it's a constant process. I think you have to, if you have to be in franchising business, you have to service. And you actually have to deliver. At the end of it, if you don't deliver franchising, you can't be in franchising business.
Sure. And if you can just take a minute to elaborate on the constitution of the task force. So how do you kind of, how big is the task force and what is its constitution like?
You know, when we started, we formed an organization which is not operative at the moment, but we formed an organization which really helped us. We called it Carlson Hotels India Nepal Sales and Marketing Force. So we invited members in it, and then there was an election, amongst the ownership. And these people elected, we said we have 15 seats in the entire country, and we will have, out of 15, 8 would be from Carlson, 7 would be from owners, which was acceptable to them at that point when we started. So this body meets and takes all the decisions, and we were fortunate that they actually brought in a lot of issues beyond sales and marketing to this body. HR was one issue they brought in, wherein we developed training modules and various things, and they paid over and above the contractual costs to us. And it worked very well. And the reason for us to be #1 international operator in the country is we had the support of our owners. Without owners, because they are putting the money. We are only managing on their behalf, we are branding them. They are putting real bucks, they are signing the check.
Sure. Great point of view. Mr. Vasanth, you going to add to this?
For us, we see role clarity. What is the role of a franchisee and what is the role of the company? That has to be driven right through the organization. The team members, deliverables, KRAs, and all should be aligned. We don't want internally having conflict in terms of whose job it is. Secondly, at Landmark Group, this franchising is a bit new. In fact, we were the first in India to do it. Internationally, they don't do that. So what they did is, every franchisee partner, they said, ensure that the returns are there for them. Otherwise, don't do it. This is what the advice is. In fact, I have to justify the franchisee return internally. If it is not adequate, the proposal will be shot down, saying that don't do this. Right. Once it is committed, then it is our endeavor to make it happen. So we don't treat franchisee versus ours separately. Both the returns we are committed. And then the internal structure enables it. Whereas when this is regarding Max. But if I talk about Easy Buy, we made it even simpler. We said we will do only through franchise. Which means what happens is our training system, HR, our marketing, our scouting the property, everything is geared for the franchising. So it makes it very simple. And their deliverables also are accordingly. Unless the franchisee makes the return and achieves the numbers, the team doesn't get their, the targets met. So we have tied their fortunes to the fortunes of the franchisee. Through that, alignment also happens.
That's a great thought too. Mr. Manchanda?
I just want to make one correction. We have closed our patient service center franchisee. What I meant essentially was we have not closed any lab. Right. In terms of conflict management, there are two areas of conflict which we normally see. One is from his side. When we open more and more outlets, there is a resistance from the franchisee as to why you guys are opening more and more outlets. I think with time we have been able to demonstrate that by expanding our network, we also have been able to grow our business. In fact, he or she has been able to see the growth. From our side, the demand essentially has been on quality because that's very, very important deliverable on our side. Making sure that he has the trained manpower, making sure that he's following the entire process very well. We do a lot of quality audits on a frequent basis. In case he or she doesn't get good marks, we end up actually taking some action. So these are two areas of conflict. In terms of profitability, we have seen, we do a lot of hand-holding in the first 6-9 months. We are able to bring up, because it's not a very large investment in our unit, it's mainly driving a lot of traffic in the beginning, which is very, very important. That we have been able to demonstrate, especially in markets like North India. But as you go down south or down west, where our franchise may not be that strong, that's where we do a lot of hand-holding as far as providing some kind of subsidy to that collection center.
Sure. Sunchitra, you want to add to it?
Yeah, I'll add. See, a sign of a healthy, dynamic relationship is conflict. So avoiding conflict is not the solution. Having and raising the conflict is actually great for any partnership. And then tabling it and resolving it is obviously the key impact. So for us, I think one of the things that were talked about were the decision-making model. Who decides on what issue and having that clarity. The second one is not taking the relationship for granted. like any relationship, right? So each year, it's almost like renewing your vows. So you go back to the table and have your discussion with your partners, saying what are the things that are working, what are not working. Let's relook at our plans. Let's relook at our expectations and go back on each of them and say, is it working? What more should we be doing to build this relationship and take it forward? So it's almost like, you know, any relationship, you need to make sure that the focus is there, the expectations are clear as people change, because both the franchisee partners may be changing internally, our own managers may be changing, to bring that back to the focus as to this was the expectation last year, this worked, this did not work. Let's have a forum to talk about it in a formal, structured manner is, I think, the key for us, at least, what's worked.